From building bridges in Baldwin County to running Flora-Bama, we're bringing on one of the most interesting entrepreneurs in the state of Alabama, and he's done it all before he was 50, and he's not done. Bringing on John McInnis, most well-known for being one of the owners of Flora-Bama. He's also just created Coastal. He's got an incredible entrepreneur story and a faith walk that you're going to want to hear coming up on 1819 News, the podcast. We have an incredible culture here in the state of Alabama, but our politics and public policy don't reflect the people of Alabama. Media drives culture. Culture is what drives politics and public policy. Welcome, everyone, to 1819 News, the podcast. I'm Brian Dawson, CEO of 1819 News and host of this here podcast, where we are in pursuit of a free and flourishing Alabama every single week. This week is no different. You may have heard me say before that our mission at 1819 News is to inform, investigate, and celebrate. We inform the people of Alabama about what's going on in the state and why it matters. We investigate corruption. Alabama is one of the most politically corrupt states in the nation, so it's a target-rich environment. But we also celebrate the things about our state that are good, true, and beautiful. And our reason for doing that is that we believe an informed citizenry that's proud of their place will fight for it. And we've seen that happen. I could rattle off a number of things. The library fight has probably been the clearest indication of that. But this week is going to be a lot more of an emphasis on celebrating. I think one of the things that we need to do a lot more of is celebrating the people who create jobs in a tax base, people who have been risk takers and innovators who have gone on to create businesses that employ people and pay into the taxes. And these people are always, philanthropic and helping out in their local communities and everything else. And so as I thought, like, who are some interesting entrepreneurs in the state of Alabama? And I thought, what about who are some young guys? And there's no one that comes like the best entrepreneur under 50 in the state of Alabama, to me, is John McInnis. And so we're bringing him on. He is one of the owners at Flora-Bama, and he's also the owner of Coastal in Orange Beach, just an incredible restaurant. He'll talk about the details of it. It's unbelievable. Both guaranteed you're familiar with Flora-Bama. If you're not familiar with Coastal, you need to get familiar with it and go down and eat down there next time you're in Orange Beach. But he has been a restaurateur. But before that, he's just a serial entrepreneur. This guy's done all kinds of things in so many different arenas, and he's been successful at all of it. So I wanted to bring him on to talk about his story, his experience, and really how he's gotten to where he is today. And in the overtime segment, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what's going on with Donald Trump, his trips to Mar-a-Lago, things like that. But before I introduce John to you, I want to ask you guys to please go to the YouTube page. We're trying to build up our YouTube audience from when we've been unceremoniously removed by the evil dark lords at Google and Facebook and YouTube. So we're now building our base back up. And so if you go there, like and subscribe, leave a comment, share this podcast, all of those things help build that up. If you've already done that, something else you can do is you can go on the website and click Become a Member and sign up to become a member and financially support the work we're doing because we are, after all, citizen supported. No money taken from USAID. None of that can be found here in our coffers, nor are we taking money from the Alabama Department of Public Health and the money that they're throwing around to tell people to get vaccinated, but that's neither here nor there. We are supported by citizens, so please go be one of those citizens that's supporting us. Well, now, without further ado, I want to introduce to you the man of the hour, John McInnis. John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Brian, thank you for having me, and thanks for all you guys do to showcase everything going on in this state. And I believe you guys do it with integrity and do a good job. And thank you for the kind words about me. I'm not sure that they were earned, but I'm happy to come tell my story.
Yes, no, I think they are, and I think I probably could have sold you some more, but I'm gonna let you tell your story, and I think people will be intrigued by it. There's nothing like, to me, one of the greatest things is about our country is the business background, the history of the businesses and everything, and they all have a common thread of risk taking, stepping outside of your comfort zone to go and risk everything to make something incredible. And there's always the risk taking and the innovation. Those two things is just part of the American spirit and why we are who we are as Americans. And every time you talk to a successful entrepreneur, there's an aspect of that in it. Some stories are better than others. I think yours is actually one of the more engaging ones of folks that I've talked to. So you are 46, we talked about. So you did all this before you were 50. And so many years to go, Lord willing. Talk about where it all began and kind of how you got into business.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I'm 46. I've got a wife, Shelly. She's originally from Birmingham. I got 3 boys, 18, 11, and 8. So I cover kind of the gamut, all boys. We'll get into owning a honky-tonk later, but you can imagine how much fun 3 boys in a honky-tonk are. It's a full-time job. But I live in Orange Beach full-time, born in Alabama. My grandfather was a recon engineer in World War II and was from Clio, Alabama. So in Clio, my grandfather was born there, George Wallace, Guy Slauson. I think you know the Slausons there from Barber County over there.
Yeah.
And so small town Alabama. My grandfather was a recon engineer in World War II, came back from the war, like most of those guys shouldn't have survived, became proficient in engineering, map reading, construction in the war, not in school. And came back and worked for the Barber County Highway Department, which you can imagine how rural it was back in those days.
Yeah.
And he became very proficient in road and bridge building, ultimately moved our family to Montgomery. And we kind of family joke when we moved from Clio to Montgomery, it disqualified the town for a red light because there were only 100 people in the town. And to this date, I think there's still one red light in Clio. But so humble beginnings there through blood, sweat, and tears of my grandfather, my grandmother, my dad, and my 2 uncles. Family bridge building business grew to build over 1,000 bridges all over the Southeast, some all over the country, and a majority here in Alabama. Did it with our own people, own equipment, bidding the work. So you may do a lot of work, but in that business, a lot like most construction, it's eat what you kill, and you start with zero every day or every year, and you have to go, bid work and live off bid work. And some years are good and some years are bad. And the good Lord blessed us to do that for, I guess, a couple decades. Started the family company in 1970. But over the decades, learning how cyclical the business was, where you'd make money, then you lose money holding on in the lean times. My grandfather and my father and my uncle started diversifying into underground utility work, military-based construction work like Maxwell Gunner, Alabama base work. We built and owned the Mobile Bay Ferry going across Mobile Bay. So 14 hours a day, 7 days a week in the bridge build business, building projects with our own people, own equipment, as tough as you can get coming up, and probably one of the riskiest businesses in the world. But they saw the need to diversify and were open-minded enough that with very little free time they had, they started to diversify us. And we were in business with, it was really originally Newell McInnis. And we bought the Newells out in the 80s. It became the McInnis Corporation. And then in the 90s, my father and Tim James were best friends. And my dad had seen how there was, a lot of funding for the road and bridge business, then there would be none. And there was, 1,000 projects and filing cabinets that need to be built, but no federal or state money. And so long story short, my dad and Tim James looked for a place to go build a toll road. Happened to be Tim's dad was governor. The two weren't tied together, but it was just timing. And we grew up coming down here to Orange Beach. So they designed and built the Foley Beach Express toll road, designed it on napkins, just common sense, Alabama thinking of, hey, would you pay $2 to not sit in 2 hours of traffic going to the beach? And they went to landowners for 14 miles and said, look, we're not the state Tim's dad's governor. The state can't give us a penny of state money, so we can't buy your land. We can't afford to. But if you'll donate your land to the project, you're out here in the middle of nowhere in a sod field. We'll, quadruple the value of your land if you'll donate the right of way. And so they spent a couple of years doing that and gotten people to donate their lands. And we went to Boston and borrowed like $36 million from John Hancock back in the 90s, which was a lot of money. It still is today, and built the Foley Beach Express toll road. Was at that time, I guess it was the largest successful privately owned toll road in the country, and kind of really an American dream story. So that, I was in 96, I guess I was getting out of high school. They started that project. They completed it in June of 2000. I was graduating from the University of Alabama, and in business, and I think business and political science, history, and got done with Alabama, moved down to the coast to run that project and kind of the southern division of our bridge building enterprise in the Mobile Bay Ferry. And about that time, Hurricane Ivan hit, and we ended up cleaning up all of the city of Orange Beach after the hurricane. And that was probably a year and a half project. And my father and I poured ourselves into that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're able to clean up the city in about 4 months, which was enough time during the winter to get the whole city open for business, where all of us that counted on this place to make a living didn't go broke. And so, looking back, I guess we really made a name for ourselves in the disaster business, and I certainly did. I was in my early 20s. Personally, I had the greatest parents in the world, but had just lost my mother to a car accident, where she was in a coma for 9 months and passed away. And I guess my way of dealing with that was pouring myself further into work and just working around the clock, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, really like my grandfather and my father had done most of their life, but probably even to a different level. And I found myself in the disaster business and really good at it, just managing very complex things and projects. And so Katrina hits in 2005. We end up going to New Orleans, and long story short, ended up with the largest demolition project in U.S. history that was FEMA funded. We tore down 10,000 houses in St. Bernard Parish, which was then and maybe even today the largest FEMA-funded demolition project ever. Ultimately, we and our partners over there wrote the mass demolition plan for the United States because there wasn't one, not because we were, the disaster experts, but there just wasn't one, and we figured out how to do it. And a lot of the things that we did have, been adopted by the Corps of Engineers and other contractors, and they built upon that. So we finished with Katrina, and we come back to Orange Beach, and that industry is like going to war. You're in fight or flight the whole time. There's no breaks. The intensity is very high, and we had done that now for 4 or 5 years, and we were very successful. So we were getting asked about Iraq, Afghanistan, and different things like that were a whole different level of commitment. And long story short, that wasn't God's plan for me. I came back to Orange Beach, and Dad and I decided to just take a break and kind of reassess where we were. My uncle and my cousin were going to carry the bridge business into the future, and we were going to focus on disaster. And at the same time that was happening, that was in the late 2000s, I meet my wife, Shelly, who was from Birmingham but was living down here. I got into conversations with Joe Gilchrist and Pat McClellan that owned the Flora-Bama, and they needed somebody to carry it into the future. So I had agreed to do that to give me something back home to really work on. We had sold the toll bridge and the Mobile Bay Ferry and diversified out of anything down at the beach. So I wanted something where I lived, and Flora-Bama fit that, even though I'd never dreamed of being in the bar or restaurant business. And so here I am. I got, getting married, taking over the Flora-Bama. I'm stepping back from disaster. And my life just took a whole different turn from there.
If you're running a ministry or you own a business, my guess is that you've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while now, but for various reasons it hasn't happened yet. Send me an email. I need to personally connect you with Yonder Child Media. They built this studio in 2 days and tackle all of the production. I just come in, start talking, and leave. It's that easy. They do everything else. Whether you want to record at your business or a home office like they just built for me, you come in, start talking, and Yonder Child will do everything else. Send me an email. That's going to be BRYAN, Brian.Dawson, DAWSON at 1819news.com, and I'd be happy to personally connect you. Every one of those, you could probably do a podcast on each of the projects from disaster and the bridge and everything else. But I think what you're most well known for, at least from my perspective, is Flora-Bama. And what an incredible experience to provide. I mean, it's a service, it's an environment, it's all of the things, as you said, a honky tonk on the beach.
Yeah.
And what comes with that, to be able to meet the stars that, I mean, we all grew up. You're 46, I'm 40. We grew up listening to, Alan Jackson, Kenny Chesney. I mean, all these guys.
Yeah.
And now you've got this place where it's like the coolest venue in the country that everybody wants to come to. Man, what was that like?
Well, it was, I swore it was funny. The only business my dad and I said we'd never get in was the bar restaurant business. And here I ended up pretty much full time in it. So at that time I'd partnered with my friend Cameron Price, and Cameron and I were working on military projects together. And when the opportunity came up for Flora-Bama, we were like, hey, let's do this. And then we ended up becoming the owners of it. And we were like, hey, somebody's got to run this. And we were like, hey, let's run it and not do the military stuff, not do the disaster stuff for a while. So we just poured ourselves into it. And Flora-Bama's, what everybody's heard. It's a wild, crazy beach bar honky tonk, but it's just so much more than that. We ended up with a church that meets there every Sunday, almost 1,000 people, 7,000 people on the beach at Easter. That's been going on almost 15 years now. We built the restaurants across the street. So we've tried to make it better without changing it. And I think we've been successful. One interesting note about Flora-Bama is, it's cool. It's got, 1 to 2 million visitors come through that big old shack every year. But most notably, we book over 3,500 musicians a year. And to our knowledge, I don't know that anybody else does that, especially for a bar restaurant, but even for a music venue, that's a lot of artists. And we still house the oldest and largest songwriters festival in the country, Frank Brown International Songwriters Festival, every November. And that's 200 of the top songwriters in the world that wrote all the songs you and I grew up to, listening. And our partner, Joe Gilchrist, had started that back in the 80s. So we just continued, to build upon these things, and it just ended up where it has today. And, I grew up on Mobile Bay. I didn't start by saying that, but I grew up there till I was 9. And I love being on the Gulf and living at the beach and getting to be a part of all the cool things that I have been. I'd love to answer a few Flora-Bama questions and then kind of expand into
Sure, 100%.
We did.
Yeah, one of the conversations you and I had when we first met, you were kind of telling me what you did at Flora-Bama. And again, it's like, okay, you're coming into a business that has kind of a legacy of its own, but there needs to be some changes. You came in, and I think one of the stories, if I remember you talking about, was, changing the process on, like gifting people drinks, or you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember. Yep. Yeah, with, just accountability, things, that you would do in any business, but, the Flora-Bama always operated real loose. And so what we did was we tried to put accountability in there, but also give flexibility to our employees to let them run the business. And at the time we took it over, I think we had, you had 50 employees and they'd go to a little over 100 during the season. Well, now we're looking at 500 to 600 employees just at Flora-Bama. And so we knew with where we were growing, we had to have real accountability. And so one of the things we did is empower the bartenders. And we said, look, like, you're authorized to give away drinks in your sole judgment. If it's so-and-so's birthday, give them a drink or a free cheeseburger. If somebody's had a bad day, take care of our customers, but ring everything up. Let everything have a value and everything be accountable. And even to this day, Cameron and I pay for our own drinks, our own food, just to kind of set that tone of accountability. And then, a lot of our key employees, we incentivize off the net income of the business. So if a beer's stolen or if something's wasted, they get negatively affected just like we do. But if the business does well, they get incentivized just like we do as owners.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And giving your employees the freedom to do what they do, but with that freedom also comes accountability. And that's what being an entrepreneur is, in a sense, is you're almost kind of letting them be an owner in that right.
You are. And you have liability, and we're all protecting the place that we love, and we want to see it there for another 100 years. And that comes with a lot of responsibility to do things the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is, I can't imagine. What is your coolest memory or just some of your favorite Flora-Bama stories?
It'd be the simple things. It'd be sitting there with Cameron and Joe and Pat and, just people at the Flora-Bama listening to music and hearing the stories behind the songs. It'd be a lot of that. It'd be the church service. Ultimately, the church married Shelly and I, and it'd be watching people get, saved by Jesus in a bar. That's certainly cool. Baptizing people in the Gulf, watching, the volunteers of the church or our employees, help people in the community. Those are the type things that have really made it worthwhile. I know that, if you Google it, you see the high points and we've done some really cool stuff. And if you go into more of the, I don't like the superficial word, but if you go into more of like the public side of it, certainly the concert with Kenny Chesney on the beach, Kenny's a friend and wrote a song called Flora-Bama back in 2014, and part of his American Kids album. And you had already had the fame of Jimmy Buffett coming to Flora-Bama, being from the area, writing the song Bama Breeze about it. And, Playboy magazine saying it was the top beach bar in the country, and Mullet Toss was famous. You already had a lot of that. But when Kenny wrote the song Flora-Bama and we did a free concert to 40,000 fans on the beach for our 50th anniversary and his only show of the year and his first show for the American Kids album, it kind of sent Flora-Bama into the stratosphere. I mean, it really cemented it as an iconic place. And that was, in terms of career accomplishments, even though I've done a lot of cool stuff, that was the highlight of my career. Kenny has said the same. It was, you look at all the thousands of once in a lifetime things he's done. And that was one of, if not his fondest memories. That was 40,000 people on the beach. That was pretty cool.
How did you do that? How do you get 40,000 people on the beach?
We announced it and then had to figure it out because we had no choice.
Ready, fire, aim.
I think we rented hundreds of Greyhound buses. We had no parking. And just, logistics is my background. And certainly that's all those guys do on the road. And so we just took all our expertise and ended up putting 40,000 people on a site with no parking. And God was good and protected us. And there was even a rainbow over the site the next day, kind of like a God wink. And it was beautiful.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, having a success like that, it seems like, okay, you can, hang your hat up. Well, you had that success before you were 45. So it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah. And back in, those days, I'd say, 10 years ago, Cameron's a builder too. Like he likes building. And it's not, whatever's inside of us. I was a builder like my grandfather and my father. It didn't matter if I was building bridges, if I was rebuilding communities after a disaster, if I was building a beach concert. Like it's nothing to do with money. There's just, when you're a builder, there's something in you and you got to feel that need to build and to create. And so we were enjoying the beach bar business so much and the entertainment business. We were like, what if we could take what we've learned here at Flora-Bama and go do more beach bars, right? Like, how cool of a life would that be? And so we ended up partnering with a childhood friend of mine, Thomas Gallion, over in 30A, and built Shunk Gully over there. A nice, high-end, my opinion, still the coolest beach bar restaurant ever. It's over in 30A. And then we built some famous, unique liquor stores over there. And then we built Galleons, named it after Thomas, which is probably the highest end fine dining restaurant over there in 30A. And so built a portfolio of things over in 30A. And then over here, we built the Orange Beach store, which is a trademark brand, lifestyle apparel. It's the orange with the word beach in it. That's trademarked. We built a lifestyle apparel business over here in Orange Beach. And then across the street, we built Coastal. And I guess Coastal, we really don't think about things like this, but it's, 1,200 seats, 8 acres on the Gulf. I'm assuming it's the largest beachfront restaurant maybe in the country. We really hadn't gone around looking, but it's kind of hard to imagine there'd be one bigger than that. Yeah. And it's turned out to be, a grand slam and kind of right there at Boardwalk and Park Place when it comes to the Alabama Golf Course.
Sure.
And so we just kind of spent 10 or 15 years taking what we learned and continuing to build. And we probably got, around 1,200 employees now and management team of 100 people. And we're blessed to, be in one of the coolest industries in the world. In addition to that, continued to do the disaster work, worked on the BP oil spill. After, that happened, I ended up running Kenny Chesney's Love for Love City Foundation in the U.S. Virgin Islands and the BVI, British Virgin Islands, after Hurricanes Maria and Irma in 2017. That area got walloped, and that was Kenny's backyard and my second home as well. And with all his relationships down there and his heart for that island and that area, and my background, we were able to go help that area rebuild because they were totally dependent on the outside world. So we got to do cool things like, I think Kenny and I and his team flew out 2,000 animals that we got vaccinated, put in shelters, and later adopted that would have been probably lost or, dead or euthanized. So really cool stories like that, and got to rebuild 1,000 houses for the U.S. STEP program and help kick it off in Puerto Rico and St. Croix. So, continue to scratch the itch in the disaster business when Phil called to do it.
Man. Just I've been friends with you for a couple of years now. I consider you a good friend, and it's the funniest thing to me about all of this. And like, I've heard you tell your story at the 68 Ventures thing this past year, Chasing Greatness, that Nathan Cox put on.
Yeah.
And even hearing some of the things now that I didn't hear you say then, it just makes me laugh even more so, because I'll be sitting at Coastal and you will walk by with a drink in your hand and like board shorts and a t-shirt on your phone, just like cruising by, and no one has any idea who you are. Right? You just blend right in. And again, that's the way you want it. You're not trying to be, I'm the guy that did all this and all that. You blend right in. Nobody would ever know, and you're just cruising along, and I think that's just probably one of my favorite things about you is that if you didn't know, if you didn't tell this story, no one would ever know. You're just the most down to earth, cool, would help, give someone the shirt off your back. So really appreciate that about you.
No, well, thank you, buddy. And to be honest, I'm not that bright. It took a lot of humility and humbling by our creator to get to that point. And, I spoke at Nathan's deal the other day, and I meant it. I mean, I've made 1,000 mistakes that there's no way I should be where I'm at in life and have been as successful. And, you look at the accomplishments and things I've done, and there are about 10 once in a lifetimes in there. And it's impossible. It was God's hand of protection and favor. And I'm very grateful for that. And the second you start thinking you're the reason you were successful, that's when you're going to fall off a cliff. And God will remind you who really was responsible for the success. So I've had enough pain and trouble and stress in my life to want to put myself through that anymore. So I give him all the glory and the credit. And he's
Man.
recently blessed me with a new place. I don't know if I told you this. I'm blessed to be new owner of Honey Break, which is a famous place in Louisiana. It was the old Louisiana Delta Plantation, and it's a 20,000 acre wildlife, I'd say refuge, but hunting property, one of the top duck and deer properties in the country. And it's a very similar story to Flora-Bama, where the owners, it was two brothers. One brother passed away, and they needed somebody to help carry it into the future. And I ended up, Riley Green's a buddy of mine, got started, before he was famous at Flora-Bama. We became buddies, and I rode over there with him one day and fell in love with the place and sat in a deer stand talking about God with the CEO, Drew Keith, and watched him pray over all these guys duck hunting, and kind of fell in love with it. And, circling back to God's providence and all of it, I got into the discussion of whether to, get involved and buy it and carry it in the future. And I'm walking around the lodge one day, and I'm like, God, is this you or me? This is an expensive hunting place. I don't need to do this unless you're telling me. And I'm walking around, and you'll appreciate this. I walk up the stairs, and on the wall, I saw a psalm to the Lord, and I love David. And so I was like, this is cool. And I go to lean in, and it was not David. It was the brother that had passed away, Ron Johnson, had written a psalm of praise to the Lord.
Wow.
And that was my sign that I felt like God was telling me, he wanted me to move forward on it. So just never ending cool stuff that the Lord lets me do, man. I'm just along for the ride.
Amen. I've got a similar, obviously, story where God just continues to do amazing stuff, and I get to be a part of it. And I think one of the reasons that you and I connected from the very, very beginning is faith. And so with the last couple minutes here, talk about a little bit, I guess, your testimony. How did you come to Christ?
Yeah. So, grew up, great parents, great family. My mom's side was Catholic, so I grew up in the Catholic church. We didn't go every Sunday. My parents knew and taught me about God and Jesus, but we weren't really spirit filled. I think we led that life, and God gave us integrity, but I wouldn't say we were saved in the way we needed to be. And so anyway, I lost my mom in a car accident, poured myself into work, ended up very successful, killing myself. When I wasn't working, I was living like a rock star, no drugs, but I just didn't stop having fun and working on projects. And so that led me to a point where I was just worn out mentally, physically, spiritually, and I was making a ton of money, and there was no amount of projects I could complete. There was no amount of money I could make, things I could buy that would fill this hole inside my soul that I woke up with every day. And I had everything a man could have, women and material possessions and money and accomplishments and fame. And I woke up with the same hole every day. And so I woke up one day and said, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I need you to fill this hole in my soul. And I learned that God made us with a missing piece, and that was a relationship with He and Jesus. And so that when I asked Him to come into my heart and be the Lord and Savior of my life, it literally I felt complete, and I felt whole, and I felt satisfied. And when I started placing my happiness in that, in my relationship with God and Jesus, all my problems, they didn't go away, but they didn't bother me like they used to, because I wasn't placing my happiness in the things of this world that go up and down, because there's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, you're going to have problems, and you're going to have ups and downs, and He doesn't go up and down. He is solid, steady, the same every day. And so I gave my life to Him. Funny, my buddy Willie Robertson rebaptized me in a pond in Louisiana during the winter. And, that was fun. And so I go on to get to rebaptize my wife, my kids, and so and be a part of the ministry there at Flora-Bama and do some really, really cool things. So it guides everything in my life. And if you look, if anybody wants to look at what I've accomplished, it's all because He saved me and protected me and blessed me. It's not because mathematically, it's impossible to have done as good as I have, and I had, more serious issues.
Amen. Well, that's awesome. John, thank you so much for opening up to us and spending 30 minutes with us, sharing your story, but more than anything, sharing your faith.
Absolutely, buddy. God bless you, and God bless this great country.
Amen. Well, now, guys, we're going to roll into an overtime with John. We're going to talk, if you follow him on social media, he spends a little bit of time down at Mar-a-Lago. And so we're going to hear some of those stories and kind of how he thinks this administration's going and all that in the overtime segment. And you have to be a member in order to partake of that. So go to the website. It says Become a Member. Go there. Membership start as little as $5 a month. You get access to behind-the-scenes content like we're about to record. You get cool merch. We've got really cool merch. But more than merch, more than access, you are the citizen and citizen-supported news. So please go do that. And until next time, we will see you next week. I guess that will be the next time. Put your trust in God and keep your powder dry.